at Silver Lining, we are really committed and invested in that entire project, nationwide project of helping persons to better understand human diversity, sexual diversity, gender diversity, and how best we could educate and expose and empower young people to really be and live inclusive lives so we could all be valued in society equally, right? So we all about equality, social justice, and definitely a move towards ensuring human rights and that all persons of the human, population are able to enjoy their human rights. So we have worked in the past on projects with the British High Commission. They have been really, really supportive, and we are so thankful and grateful for their support. So we were able to actually go forward with our human rights projects, our projects on sexual diversity, ending discrimination, working in schools, and so on, to really help young people to not only better understand themselves, but to have, like Celeste said, a safer space in which to live in, to go to school in, and to really thrive. So we have here with us the British High Commissioner, Tim Stew, and he will give a little brief into the work that he has done with Silver Lining Foundation and their whole mandate towards human rights and so on. Right? So, Mr. Stew.
Hello. Good afternoon to all of you. I wanted to start by just, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me onto this session, and also to commend you for getting it all together and online, and we're all adapting under COVID-19. And in an ideal world, we would all have been together in person, but that's not the world that we're in at the moment. This issue, the issue that Silver Lining Foundation has been addressing is absolutely critical. Globally, we believe very strongly in it in Britain. We're very much for equality. We believe very firmly that people should have the same rights and should not be discriminated against on any basis, whether that's gender or sexuality or race or whatever it is. And so when we were approached by the Silver Lining Foundation with the idea to support this anti-bullying campaign and so on, and the wider work, I was really delighted to have the chance to put some support from the British government behind it through my British High Commission. We have, over the years I've been here for about 5 years, and over the years we have tried to push this agenda in a lot of ways. We're very concerned about gender-based violence in this country as in other places. We have our own problems in the UK, which we're trying to tackle. But we see just how insidious the problem can be. And when people have talked to me a lot in this country, from commissioners of police to prime ministers to people in the street, have talked to me a lot about their concerns about overall violence in this country. My response has been very much that we need to tackle it early and young, and need to make sure that education is a really critical part as to how we tackle the issue. If collectively we're having to tackle the issue by dealing with violence which has already emerged, with the police having to tackle that, then we failed. And we all have our part to play, but the educational point is so important. So that was why I was very keen when Silver Lining Foundation approached us to support this, because I think it's really vital that we start early, we start young, and we look at these issues of violence and discrimination. I have my own memories of school. I remember discrimination there too, although it was a long time ago. And that's, again, I would have loved a sort of intervention at that stage, which would have encouraged us to think a bit more widely when we were younger about the words we used and the way that we treated each other. And I think this is a great part of an effort to tackle bullying, discrimination in schools, and ensure a safe, fearless and healthy environment for learning. For those of you who have taken part I've no doubt you've discussed a wide range of issues, and I'm keen to hear what you've learned from it. But there will be issues of race, gender, sexual orientation, and the multitude of social realities that impact students at school. And I very much hope that you will have thought about gender and the stereotypes that sometimes persist in everyday life, and particularly talked about bullying and how it happens and its devastating impacts. But I hope you'll also have learned some of the positives, not just those negatives, but about mediation and other ways of stopping or managing these behaviours in the classroom. Because it is, after all, where we first learn to grant everyone the same dignity, respect, and rights. Ronelle, I'll pass back to you. Thank you very much again for inviting me.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So before we go on, just wanted to give a little brief into the climate survey that we did, the Silver Lining Foundation, with schools. So this year would make it the second round of the survey that we completed, where we went into schools, just like the schools that you all go to, secondary schools across the country, and we did surveys with 60 students from approximately 45 schools. So it was over 2,000 students in all, really making it a wide cross-section, covering from Port of Spain to Arima, Manzanilla, Cedros, Tobago, all these places. So the survey and the data is currently in collation, and it is being written up, the report itself. The last time we did it was 3 years ago, and the findings that came out of that research were really, really shocking. And it revealed that bullying does indeed take place in schools. A lot of teachers and even the ministry, at one point in time, the Minister of Gender, as well as the Minister of Education, had said a couple of years ago that bullying does not happen, it doesn't take place in schools, it is something that doesn't exist, right? So we said, you know what, that sounds really odd. We know that it happens. We have heard stories. We have heard students speaking about it. So let's go into the schools directly and do this survey via questionnaire to really get some information and some real life data from students in terms of their experience in schools, right? So the general climate, meaning the atmosphere within the school setting, the school climate. So it was found that bullying does in fact take place. There is a lot of homophobia and homophobic bullying, where statistics have shown from the report before that persons are bullied based on their sexual orientation as well as their perceived sexual orientation. So and it's interesting that we found that perceived sexual orientation, because a lot of times young people, they might look at someone who might not be boyish enough or girlish enough, who doesn't fit into that category, that social category, who isn't traditionally feminine, traditionally masculine. And, you know, they would be harassed, discriminated, bullied, made fun of, called names, right? Based on this perceived sexual orientation. So we found that that definitely did happen in schools. And we also saw that there were lots of issues as it pertained to sex education and issues surrounding sexual consent, where persons weren't even sure if their consent sexually and so on, and their bodies were being violated, because there's such a thin line, right? Today in society between sexual consent, consenting to sex and sex acts and sexuality and so on, and it just being something that you could just pass by. Oh yeah, boys and girls touch each other in school all the time, touch each other in class all the time. You know, that's just the way of life. That's how we operate. That's how we roll, right? But understanding consent is something culturally that we as a people have, you know, a little way to go. Again, so those were two major findings that came out of this study. We also saw that the people who were bullied often end up being the perpetrators of the violence and end up bullying others themselves. So it really goes to show that it's so cyclical in nature, and doing this type of work, getting the information, and really coming here to expose and open the minds of young persons would really help to curb that or break that cycle. Yeah. So the study and the report was very interesting. It's actually up on our website. So if you are like, you could actually go to thesilverliningfoundation.com and check it out if you are interested. And it is in its second cycle. So probably by, well, with COVID and all of that, I guess probably by August or September, we should have the second cycle done in our report with the analysis of the data and everything. And this time we filled a lot of gaps because we touched on more than 2,000 students and way more schools across the country. So we could make more generalized statements concerning the school climate, bullying, sexuality, sex ed, gender expressions, gaps and flaws, consent, sexual rights, and so on, and how we could actually move forward to enhance or really fix the situation where persons could really live and enjoy equality, human rights, peace, and justice.